So
I'm just happy because you guys can share it.
Oh, no.
I'm not present.
I got it now.
yesterday, somebody should have gone. I've had two online.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Yeah. Yeah. We got ourselves. Yeah.
Looks official now. Hold up.
So thank you everyone who is here today. It's interesting, we're having a discussion. The first meeting was at 8 o'clock, which, I mean, I'm at work. I thought that was a little early. Maybe that was an inhibitor to folks being here, but I think Camilla's onto something when she said that it's probably a challenge in the middle of the day for people to leave whatever it is they're doing, or Crystal to battle traffic an hour to get from Mayo to here. But thank you everybody for being here. What we strive to do today is to update you on what the subcommittees have done since the last meeting, to share what I think is some pretty impressive information, and just to kind of level set where we are going forward. So thank you for being here today, those of you that are either in person or online. And I will turn it over to Dr. Geyer.
Awesome. Well, you all received the email. It's got the outline for today. Also has the PowerPoint, so feel free to fill that out if you like. For everyone online, please do type in the chat if you're having any difficulty with audio. We've got a new device here that hopefully is capturing things a bit better than last time. For questions, we will be offering 5 minutes of Q&A sessions after each speaker. We'll be monitoring the chat, so feel free to type in any, raise your hand virtually, and we'll capture those questions as well. We'll also have some at the end for those of you who have some lingering. We're really excited about the progress that's been made. It's been a month since we last met, but it doesn't feel like it from a productivity standpoint. I would guess we've had 6 months worth of work put in those 4 weeks. You're going to be very impressed with what the subcommittees have put up today. I would keep in mind that everything that's being presented is for your specific subcommittee's information. Please absorb what's relevant and make changes or ask questions based on what you know for your specific subcommittee. We want to keep everyone engaged and moving forward on the same topics. If you're finding conflict, if you're finding material that doesn't seem to be in the direction you're familiar with, or where your group is taking it, we need to know. Lots of moving parts in this, so we appreciate everyone's attendance to this. And we're going to get started here. Our first group is the policy subcommittee here. I'm sorry, survey and overdose monitoring subcommittee, I believe. We've got Kathy Johnson chairing this, and then William Walker and Yvonne Garber to kick us off. So thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Kathy Johnson, and I am chairing this survey and overdose monitoring subcommittee. And my associate chairs are William Walker and Yvonne Garber. So just as a reminder what our subcommittee was about. I cannot advance. Gotta love technology.
Give me 37 seconds. There we go.
Okay.
Say next slide.
All right, will do. So here's the purpose of this particular subcommittee. We wanted to create and distribute a survey so we could determine kind of the state of opioid abuse and the state of naloxone or Narcan in schools. And so that was the main function of our subcommittee. Secondly, we wanted to look at how to develop a mechanism or a tool by which we could allow schools to be able to report overdose instances and kind of gauge the spread of opioid use throughout the state. So to that end, in terms of the survey, the team did create a survey. You can go to the next slide now. And for this, now I have to click it. There we go. So we did distribute the survey July 15th through our ADE comms office, and we sent it out to several distribution lists, but the primary distribution list was one that ADE has here that incorporates all of the schools that we wanted to reach across the state of Arizona. And we plan to send reminder emails as well, because we sent it in the summer, so in July still, and some schools hadn't started. We thought that might be a good idea to do that anyways, because we could, perhaps catch some of those administrators at the front end before school actually begins. But we will send reminder emails through our ADE comms office to complete the survey. Basically send it to a designee at their schools, because we sent it out to the districts, right? And so the goal is to receive responses by August 26th and to be able to analyze the data. And hopefully then we're going to be able to just sort of review that data and develop later on an overdose monitoring tool based on what we know from the survey on the data that we gather. And so far we've had a few responses, but again, we'll send out some email reminders, and we hope to get many respondents by August 26th, and then we'll be able to really take a good look at the data that we get from our schools. And next, I'm going to ask Yvonne to guide us through a discussion about the survey specifically.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello there, everyone. My name is Yvonne Garber. I serve as an associate chair for the Survey and Overdose Monitoring Subcommittee of the Stop It Task Force. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the responses that we have received thus far. I'm happy to share that since about 1:15 p.m. we are at N equals 35. So please keep in mind that this number is subject to change. We will be sending reminders out to schools through our various listservs. The first reminder will be going out this upcoming Monday, July 29th, and again on August 12th. So primarily, we really want to engage schools schools and school districts as they are starting school. We know time really picks up on them during the beginning of the school year. So really just sending those consistent reminders so that things don't get lost in the mix. And then this will also allow us to further engage more of the school health office personnel as they will be starting as well. So we're also considering sending a final reminder on August 19th, just to allow people, that final week to ensure that they are getting their survey responses in. So some limitations for our survey responses thus far are that some schools really haven't even begun their 24 to 25 school year. The survey is not mandatory, and bias from school communities, just depending on how controversial this topic can be for some communities. Next slide, please. So just some information, general information we did want to share related to the responses we do have at this point. We are pretty close in the split between rural and urban respondents to the survey. So urban really encompassing right about 56% and rural encompassing about 44% of our responses. Next slide, please. And then the next information we wanted to share with you is just the responses we've had to one of the questions in the survey. Does your school, district, or charter have naloxone or something similar on site? So we are able to see that about 54 of our respondents are indicating that they do have naloxone or something similar on site. And then about 35% indicating that they do not, with the remaining stating that they do not know. So our plan for individuals who indicate they do not know whether naloxone is stored on site, we are looking into strategies to engage them and engage individuals within their school community who might have the responses that we are looking for that survey. Next slide, please. So thus far, we've had some reported barriers to student training. So primarily those responses are pushback from parents, staffing, lack of training, and time. So you'll see a lot of asterisks in this presentation as this is all based on our current responses. So it is subject to change. We really just wanted to give you a brief update as to where the survey stands. And it's pretty exciting to see that about 2 weeks after survey has been sent out, we do have some significant responses. So I really anticipate we'll get some strong engagement when all schools are back in session. Next slide, please. So our reported barriers to implementation, and these are just qualitative responses that we have received through free response form. So the primary reported barrier to implementation at this point being, I don't think schools will develop policies unless their hands are forced by state law. Arizona is notorious for ignoring best practices related to healthcare and nursing care. So just thinking with that in mind, just thinking about how we really want to be intentional with how we proceed. And then next slide, please. We also documented just additional questions and comments that we received through free response in the survey thus far. Policies should be determined and aligned in accordance with recommendations from the medical field, and policy templates and best practices for procedures would be helpful, including the aftermath of administering Narcan or naloxone or something similar. Next slide, please. So our deliverables, I know in our previous meeting, we did have the preliminary codebook indicated as well as an initial monitoring form draft. We are still working on those. So we anticipate having a pretty fleshed out preliminary codebook for individuals to look at, and that will support our data analysis once we have completed receipt of survey responses. We will also plan to have an initial monitoring form draft. So we have been just doing some back-end research on best practices, forms that local health departments, municipal health departments are utilizing at this time, and really engaging other organizations that have been striving to monitor overdoses within their specific communities. So deliverables post-survey, we are really hoping to have a data brief available for our constituents that will really identify just Arizona-specific information specific to youth communities and school-aged youth. We have not seen that in our research thus far. With that, we are looking at potential collaboration with the training team, and through this data brief, we will include key findings from the survey. Next slide, please. And that is the breadth of our update for this committee meeting. I thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll have some good updates for you in the next meeting. Thank you.
If we could actually keep maybe one of you up there, just to answer some questions. I know we've got one right here.
Dr. Johnson, William, and Yvonne, this is amazing work that you've already done. So that was a lot of work. So congratulations. I saw the preliminary survey and it was awesome. And I don't know if everybody has seen it, but it is incredible the amount of work that's already been done. This is more of a comment, but as the chair of the training subcommittee, I think that we should meet as you guys get preliminary results back, because this information will inform the subcommittee needs to know as we're choosing curriculum. And so this is really, I think, for our committee specifically, very timely, and we probably have to know maybe some preliminary data so that way we can have an idea of where our gaps are. Very enlightening, in terms of the gaps of you know, what happens after you administer Narcan, these are questions that our subcommittee has asked as well, so. Thank you, but I think we probably should connect, at some point in the next few weeks.
Absolutely, I agree, and we are certainly willing to share, the information. Keep in mind that right now it's a pretty small sample,
Yeah, but that's okay.
and we can have some wild changes as the respondents begin to, submit their surveys. But yeah, I agree. I think it's great information so far, in spite of the fact that it's just a few people that have responded. But still, good stuff.
Thank you.
We'll connect for sure.
Yes.
You said 35 responses. What was the total? We have a total number of how many went out.
So we sent the survey out to, if my memory is serving me correctly, 465 email addresses that are current, and we had no bounce backs to those emails, and we haven't at this point had any questions related to the survey. So.
Yvonne, can you explain about that it was sent to districts and charters and that they're disseminated?
Absolutely. So the listserv that we have access to through our ADE communications team sends the survey memo out to superintendents and charter representatives, for which we requested that they trickle the information down to the appropriate parties within their school district and jurisdiction. So through that, we've also been able to engage some school health office personnel, understanding that, not always is it leadership that is completely privy to some of the questions we are asking in the survey. So with that, we have had fewer responses from those critical health office personnel, but we are really looking at strategies to continue engaging them just by sending those reminders, because I think their perspective is very valuable in this work.
Are you able to capture their position in the district when they made the survey response, just to kind of get an idea of how schools, districts are managing their current practices?
Absolutely, yeah. So in our initial survey send out, we did kind of specify by role, and we went pretty specific with how we specified it. So I think we're kind of looking at opportunities maybe to make it a little bit more broad, where they engage in what their role is through free response, but still we're able to better classify where they fall, whether it's district or school personnel.
We have relationships with principals and superintendents. I'm trying to think how I would approach this. But I just have conversations with them and say, hey, we developed a survey, or is there a survey that we can have access to email to them if it's getting lost in the shuffle?
I think
I don't know if that's going to change the bias.
I think we'd be happy to share it out. Yeah, we'd be happy to share it out with you all, just to see if you can get that further engagement from the individuals we are looking for responses from. Of course, we really want to have as breadth of detail as we can get through this survey, just to make sure our next steps are really achieving what we aim to achieve and really supporting districts where they are.
Dr. Crowe, let me ask you a question. So you saw our strategy for pushing this out. You're actually out there at a district as a superintendent. Does this make sense? Do you think that we're targeting it the right way?
It does. I just worry about getting lost in the shuffle in mailboxes that don't, like we were just talking, I have not seen it. So that database, where is it going? I get the database, and that's what we have to work with, but more direct email may help to actual superintendents, like a heads up, this is coming. You need to look for it. But we have to work with the database. I get that. Try to find a better database where it's more specific, maybe. Because we have a general one in the district, and maybe it's going to that. It gets lost in the shuffle in that general piece.
Absolutely.
We can probably look and see for Geyser, where it was sent. But the ask in the email is for superintendents to send it out to their schools, to either the principal, the assistant principal, whoever they believe is the best person to be responding to that survey.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be forwarded and it'll still work, the link. But we can certainly look into.
But you're wanting a district response, not a school response, because she said 400 something districts.
Yeah, but
There's a lot more schools than 400.
we're asking them to send it to their respective schools. So if you got the email, for instance, then you would read the email and you would say, okay, well, I have 8 schools. I need to decide who in those 8 schools I'm gonna send this to,
So
So
really,
that
we're
each
getting
school
school
can-
information.
so that each school can send
So
their.
your N is going to be much larger than 400 and something. You're wanting
Yes.
individual,
Yes.
you're wanting
yes,
individual school response.
that's
Yes,
correct.
that is
Okay,
correct.
so that wasn't clear. Just sitting here, that wasn't clear either. I thought we wanted district response.
No, School responses, yeah. So, I mean, hopefully, we're conveying the right message in the email, so that superintendents or district heads, charter heads know that we would like, responses from each school.
Okay, so probably need some clarity on that, I would say. And timing right now is a little rough for schools because they are starting up. So everything that does not have to do with starting the school year gets put on that back burner. That's just the reality of it. The kids are coming in 1 week. Some people are in right now. There's districts that started, so
Sure.
tasks that are not as important to taking care of kids and families in your community, they kind of get set aside. And we'll get to that later, so that might be what you're seeing too with some of the low responses right now.
That's why I wanted to ask you the question, as a superintendent, you would be a target audience, but you haven't seen it.
Not that I remember. This was early.
And I understand, and to your point, I understand how busy you are right now as well. So
Right.
perhaps we
So
can
we'll
talk,
continue to send it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we can talk maybe after this, if we have just a minute, so we can just pick your brain a little bit more.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I do have some comments coming in here. So there's Aja Dazu. I apologize if I mispronounced this. There's a comment, just to clarify, are you wanting multiple people to respond from a building? The Arizona School Counselors Association could send it to our membership if you'd like us to.
And we are looking for really the number of responses that is going to get us to the valuable information. So we understand, we might have some individuals responding to the survey currently indicating, I don't know. So with that, we'll be really identifying which ones have specified I don't know and trying to target to get that information to the appropriate parties, whether it happens through one person or multiple. I think we're happy to have multiple responses and just get comprehensive information.
So to that end, Yvonne and Dr. Johnson, are you worried about over-distribution of this? Because we have partners that are willing to distribute it. Is that a problem?
No, I don't
I
anticipate
don't see
fear of
that as a problem
over-distribution.
at all.
What we sent out was just a blanket link, so like we can make multiple recorders for that and it'll like amalgamate all of the data. So we can make multiple ones to send out to different partners. That way we can somewhat keep the data separated so we know what came from where, but also have it all in one place. So we're more than happy to do that.
Separate collectors.
And if I'm not mistaken, our survey platform will also allow us to stratify based on the collector and what route it was sent to.
I just worry in that part, if we're sending it multiple places, it'd almost be better to have a one district contact so you can get that, because if I'm sending it, I send it to a principal, they send it to an assistant principal, they send it to a counselor. Now I potentially could have all those people answering and all those people may not have the correct information. So it could skew your survey based on who is answering it. So you need to get that survey in the hands of people that actually know that. So it could be distributed 4 or 5 times on the campus. And
Absolutely.
you could potentially get 4 or 5 responses and they might not all be the same.
Okay.
So just caution to that.
Thank you.
I think that's great feedback. We've got a similar question. Please share the address of the survey sender again so we can search and ensure the email wasn't diverted or overlooked. It was by Ms. Gretchen Dorner.
Thank you.
I've got another one here. I'm a superintendent, don't recall seeing it either. Can you clarify who sent the survey? That was Michael Pena. Then we got a Tim Brianna. I'm a superintendent and didn't receive it either.
Okay. Is it Tim Brienza
Yeah.
and Michael
Yes.
Penka? Is it with a C?
It was
Okay.
with the
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely.
size 5 font.
So we'll make sure that we get the survey distributed to those critical partners.
Last piece, I don't want to hijack this whole thing, but we may want to use ASA, Arizona School Administrators, as a contact. They have all the contact points. That may be a great thing to ask Paul Ty, the director, if he could assist in getting those. They have live email addresses, and for something that's important, I think you'd want to make those connections and use that.
Most definitely. Yeah, we'll draft a menu or a memo, I should say, to send to Dr. Teague at ASA.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no more questions in the room, that was the end of those online.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, teamwork makes the dream work. My goodness, these are productive. I love it. We're going to be moving on here to our policy subcommittee, and so if the team would come up. All right.
Are we clicking or not clicking?
I'm clicking.
You're clicking. Okay.
You can try. If it works.
Oh, here we go. Okay. So policy subcommittee, Gary Kirklis.
Hi, I'm Melanie Jordan.
Okay. So just again, our purpose is to create the actual policy language that schools will use and can adapt statewide. Last time we met, we talked about what other school districts are doing in other states. Or specifically in Arizona. Today we'll touch on 2 and 3, which is review policies and resources in other states, as well as our policy progress. So first, as you know, it goes to say you never want to reinvent the wheel. So if there's something out there that exists that we can modify, we'll use it because it has inertia, it's been accepted. So ADHS has an epinephrine protocol, and we use that as a framework. And we had 2 great policy writers that drafted naloxone into that. And so this is just a slide showing what the protocol for emergency administration of epinephrine included. And so our policy writers changed that into our naloxone policy. Very quickly, I applaud them for how much work they had done. It looks really great. And so this is the table of contents. I won't bore you with reading all of them, but it essentially has things like annual training, who's going to be doing the training, what type of training that would be received regarding opioid awareness, what kind of training would be, who's going to receive the naloxone training, what's the actual steps of administering the naloxone, where to procure it. And so this is just a sample of the training and who would receive the training, again, who's giving the naloxone, as well as administration of the actual opioid reversal agent. So, very solid protocol. However, Dr. Geyer had found that other states are using something called a toolkit, which is a different approach. So things that I'm used to in government affairs is just straight policy, straight, bills, and reads very boringly, but all the information is there. Other states are using toolkits, which is a more interactive, live document, someplace that numerous people throughout a school would go to. Maybe the school nurse has some questions about where to get the naloxone. Maybe another administrator has questions about what is an opioid, or maybe a concerned parent comes to you asking questions about resources of where can I go for my child who may have an opioid use issue. And so some states have utilized this toolkit, and it basically would exist as a one-stop shop. So not just something that like a policy geek would go to, it's something that anyone could go to from a variety of angles. And one state in particular was Oregon that had a really great toolkit. So it's a more of a user-friendly approach to it. And so we're currently looking at other states. And so, as I said, Dr. Geyer had found this one kind of in a similar situation where we have in Oregon, it's the health authority as well as the Department of Education coming together to create this toolkit. And if you look through it, it has essentially 2 parts. So the education awareness, all these are hyperlinked to specific sections. Things that, for example, giving a school district a sample letter to give to students and families, key messages about prevention, social media kits. So if you're a school that's very active in social media, you can have sample flyers that can go out to parents. Things that you would include in the back to school night, you could also include about opioid awareness. And then part 2 is sort of the nitty gritty as far as developing a plan. And this is all,
in meeting with various stakeholders, we get a sense that every school district is different and we can't have a one size fits all. So this sort of approaches that where you can have, sample policies and how to create one. And then on the very bottom, the appendix, all the laws that are pertinent. And so that's what the next step of what our committee is doing is sort of taking that nitty gritty bulleted protocol and putting it into a toolkit form, mimicking what Oregon has in place. So our next steps is we'll continue to merge that naloxone protocol into a toolkit format. Additionally, we'll continue to speak with the Attorney General's office. I think we just received an email that they're going back to see what sort of the legal implications about administering naloxone, who can deliver the naloxone, how we're going to procure it. Again, and getting more input from ADE and ADHS, and continuing to revise the emergency section for schools. And I think that's it.
Questions?
Maybe not. Sorry, I spoke fast.
Thank you, Gary. That was excellent. I do have a question. I know that we've discussed in that committee some rather contentious topics in other states on who can actually administer naloxone from a student perspective. Some of the barriers have been schools not allowing students to do it or punishing students that do happen to have naloxone found on their person. Do you want to talk a little bit about where the committee has landed on this for awareness for the group, and maybe if there's discussion on it, we'd love to hear it.
Sure, so I can speak to this a little bit. So we understand that every school district is different, every school site is different. And to ensure that every district can cater to their stakeholders, their students, their families, we are going to supply the information for education of students, whether it is opioid prevention, whether it's administration. However, we're not going to require any certain protocol or policy. We're putting the information out there for each district to choose what's best for their community.
And also to that point, I believe the AMA had come out and also suggested or endorsed students being able to deliver naloxone. And again, I think we talked about this the last time. Just being a pediatrician and knowing how students behave, I could just imagine a lot of times where some sort of opioid would be taken outside the direct view of a school employee, maybe behind a park, behind the stadium. And it'd be nice to be able to have students that are using, that kind of have the wherewithal to know they carry naloxone to be able to give it without fearing punishment. But again, yeah, for each school to kind of chew on that and think about what's their best approach.
Open for questions.
Maybe I spoke so fast I didn't get it all.
I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
Are you looking at this as any legislative needs from this? Because we were talking a little bit more about, mandating versus policy toolkit.
Right.
What are any thoughts on that?
When Holly first approached me and I did a little homework on what the ARS stated, I was like, I never said this. I was like, I don't think we need to do anything. I think it's pretty clear. It says the school districts shall provide a policy where an employee shall give emergency opioid reversal agent. So to answer your question, I don't think we need anything because I don't know how you would interpret that specific line as anything other than a school has to have a policy where their employee is going to give their student naloxone should an opioid emergency occur. I don't know how I approach this, how you can perhaps interpret that by saying our policy is not to have a policy or our policy is to call 911 and have a non-employee deliver the naloxone. So I don't see it as necessarily needing to go down that road. I think hopefully that, with this toolkit and answering, questions and kind of laying out in a stepwise approach that schools will say, this is something that's necessary. There's nothing to be feared by it. Naloxone is not an opioid. It can be given to anyone. I could take naloxone right now and nothing's going to happen. It's safe. It can save lives. Police officers carry it. Firefighters carry it. So, and hopefully that'll just allow schools to kind of step right into it.
Yeah, and I apologize, I haven't looked at the statute, but perhaps there's maybe something in the Good Samaritan law statutes that we may need to visit on that?
I think that's also covered
that
as
also
well. Yeah, that
Contemplated in
yeah.
there, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good,
I think
your work is done then.
I think the only thing we may need to touch on reporting. I think that might be the one, after naloxone is delivered. I don't know if states have to report that. So I think that might be the one area for new policy.
With the toolkit, would that be kind of all encompassing, like would there be, for example, student staff training resources for that fall into the toolkit then? Is that kind of vision?
I believe we have a section on that, yes.
One-stop shop.
Yeah, because I'm imagining, probably more often than an opioid emergency occurring, some parent's going to call and say, hey, I'm worried about my son's use. Where do I go? And it'd be nice to be able to have, a variety of resources for that. Or a teacher finds a pill, doesn't know what this is, in the classroom, wants to know more about opioids. They would go there. So I think it's an awesome approach because, while it's great that we're all together into getting naloxone in schools, there's a whole nother piece of that pie of people with opioid questions that are going to want to utilize this toolkit, and this is a great place for them to find it.
Michael, I think you've asked an excellent question too, and I might actually trip this back to your committee for staff and student training, because I know there have been discussions about developing specific curriculum that can go into every school to train the staff. And so as your group makes more progress on that topic, the resource, how to access it, where it will be something we can hopefully import into the policy subcommittee language for that toolkit. The toolkit will likely involve all of the language from all of the subcommittees coming together, in a formulated mechanism, including even student education, where to find it, how it's distributed. So we won't have everything ready, I would imagine, on that all at once. Hopefully most of it by the end of the year, but that educational component might be in limbo until it's completed.
Yeah, that was my general thought too, is that with this toolkit, that our educational curriculum would probably have a home, or at least some links to that and national resources based embedded within the toolkit.
Yeah.
For each of the schools, because that would be the easiest one-stop shop for all of the staff, students,
Yeah, have it like hyperlinked into if it was on YouTube, hyperlink it to YouTube, so that way, boom, right there.
Exactly.
We have two online individuals hoping to speak. The first one here, I've got Kate Dobler. Kate, feel free to unmute.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, all. I am, again, Kate Dobler. I'm the State Opioid Treatment Authority for Arizona, and I work with Access. So thank you for the discussion and presentations so far with the work of these subcommittees. I'm quite impressed with the speed with which this has moved forward. I would echo from the standpoint of, or the sentiment of creating the allowability for students to be able to administer naloxone, or whatever the formulary whatever the brand name that the school has on site, for exactly the reasons that were just articulated by current speaker. If students are taking opioids, they are likely not doing that within the view of the school personnel. And we don't have the time to wait for someone to find that student and call 911. There's not time. So to the extent that we can create the space so that students don't get in trouble for saving a life, I think that that's responsible within this opioid epidemic. So thank you for that commentary. Thank you. And I would agree. From a student training standpoint, I know we haven't gotten to that policy subcommittee yet, but there will be computer-based online training that I'm working to develop right now, specifically targeted at non-medical personnel. So parents, parapros, older students who may want to become trained and understand better, both from an education standpoint as well as what is addiction, what is substance use disorder, how do these medications work in the brain, what is naloxone, what does it do, what is the aftermath of having administered naloxone, sort of all of those threads that I'm hearing today there will be resources available that will be computer-based, video-based, narrated, links to national resources, will come with associated facilitator guides and participant handouts appropriate for high school students, but also parents and staff and community members. So just to know that those resources are on the way, being developed now. They will be free, linkable, shareable. I hope they get embedded across the board. And to highlight deep appreciation for the recognition that high school students in particular need to have the space to save a life without being in trouble.
Question, is there an ETA on the production, or when those educational videos will be?
Yeah, so there will be a total of 4 CTs, 3 that will be about 3 minutes in length, and then a 4th one that will be cumulative and really including everything, including stigma and bias and language and how do we talk about it. The timeline to have all of that production done is September 30th, the end of this fiscal year. So it will be ready by the end of year end, if not sooner. And as soon as they're done, I will share.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Kate, much appreciated. Thank you. I see another hand raised here. Ariel, feel free to unmute. This is Ariel Monroe. I'm sorry, Moreno with DHS.
Hi, yes, I am with DHS. I am the state opioid response grant manager, so the portion of naloxone sits under my job. So I just wanted to follow up with the statutes. I absolutely agree. We don't need additional standing orders or statutes for teachers, staff, administrators. It says in there, shall, exactly. And there's no responsibilities or liabilities for administering or not administering Narcan. So but there's lots of liabilities for having life-saving measures and not being able to administer them if needed for students, staff, family members, teachers. I would definitely echo Kate. I don't think anybody should get in trouble for having naloxone on their person. I personally carry it everywhere I go. So I would say if there's a chance for somebody to save somebody's life, then I think the students should have that ability too. I understand this is a political topic and this is outside of some people's understanding, scope, and things of that nature. So that's going to be an educational standpoint from the school. But as far as the Good Samaritan, I would say teach the students about it more than the staff and the teachers, because the Good Samaritan is there specifically to avoid prosecution. So for example, say I'm using substances and the person next to me is using substances, they overdose. Instead of me just running because I'm scared that I'm going to get in trouble by law enforcement, that's what the Good Samaritan Law works for, is to help people not to be persecuted and to save lives. So that might be a good framework. And then, yeah, definitely kudos on the toolkit. That's definitely seems to be the theme in my research around other state health departments and states that are implementing policies in schools for naloxone. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Ariel. Very much appreciated. I do see a comment here as well. Megan Peterson made the comment, the state school medication portal through Maricopa and Pena County now has training, protocol, and reporting requirements. It's live, courtesy of Western Regional Public Health Training Center and the University of Arizona. It's the same medication portal now used for epi and albuterol, just FYI.
That's great to know.
Excellent.
Yeah, we were able to actually launch that one.
Excellent. Any more comments from people in the room? All right.
Can they forward that information to us? Is that the same one that we found, the way that Maricopa was ordering?
I don't know.
If we have the link, I can send it to
Okay.
you guys. And it's actually in our curriculum review too.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
And Kate, this is Crystal Renzo. Can you maybe email me with a synopsis of what you were talking about in terms of those resources at some point? She's probably muted, but.
Are you asking me?
Yes, Kate.
Yes, I can. Crystal, I think I have your email, but yes, I can email you an overview of each of the three. Yeah, the one that's in development right now is actually called, What Happens After an Overdose. It speaks directly to what's the aftermath of administering naloxone. What do you do? What does it look like? How do you respond? Where do you connect? All the things.
In the curriculums that exist now, which we're gonna go through in a second, Kate, that's a huge gap. That video is crucial.
Yeah.
We have not. had
Crucial.
that In any of the.
Yeah, so it's in review right now with Dr. Michael Decker. So to get his lens as an addiction psychiatrist, board certified, and through his lens is working with Arizona Department of Corrections and Rehab. So really looking at from all of those lenses, let's make sure that this information is accurate and linked out to solid, reputable national sources so that when people search out that they're getting reputable information. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, great discussions and a big round of applause for our product team. Next up, best practices for staff student education. Dr. Renzel, Kevin Mock, Samantha Reeves. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Geyer. I'm Crystal Renzel. I think you all know me from last week. So let's see if this works or not. Okay. So we've already kind of gone over what the objectives are of the student and staff training subcommittee, but really our goal is to create a standardized student training for parents, staff, and students on opioid awareness and opioid overdose and reversal, utilizing existing best practices and local and national expertise. One of the other objectives I added here is to choose a learning management system that can disseminate curriculum to all public schools in Arizona. This is something that, as we've been meeting over the last month since the larger subcommittee met or the larger task force met, that we realized we have a gap there. And how are we going to get the curriculum to the schools, considering how different all of the schools deliver their information to students and staffs as it stands now. And then develop metrics to track success of the curriculum. And actually, from hearing from the previous two subcommittees, I think we're getting some signal there that there may be an ability to track some of this that's in development. So that's great to hear. And we'd love to partner with other subcommittees on that once we find out more data about that, particularly for the policy in terms of how you're going to track it and access to the toolkit. So as you guys know, as we talked about, this is just a large issue. I mentioned this before, but 1.1 million students who attend publicly funded schools in Arizona. And we've already gone through that there's really no standard and there's no reporting structure. So this is a big ask to get this into schools. So I already mentioned this, but I wanted to mention something else. We kind of talked about the fentanyl across the U.S.-Mexico border and that Arizona is the largest trafficker. But as you guys know, there's also fentanyls, which are being sold to our youth and disguised on social media as TikTok and Snapchat. And just to bring this back to the kids, 70% of these pills contain a lethal dose of fentanyl for an adult. So we're not talking about children, right? Which may be higher. We don't have data on that, right? So these are going to kill our kids. So we need to take over TikTok and Snapchat with our data and our news, not these people, okay, not the drug abusers. And that's really what the crux of this is. And that's what we want to really base our curriculum on, because we really want to capture the students so that they realize how important that this is. You guys know all of this. Really, this has been said by all the other subcommittees. So where are we now? So we've kind of talked about the recommendations for our curriculum. And measures that we're going to use, which now hearing from the other subcommittees, I'm really encouraged that maybe we are going to have an ability to track some of these metrics, especially getting baseline data from the survey group is going to be really important for our subcommittee. So what have we done since we met last time? So in order not to belabor this too much, because it's kind of difficult to give you guys an overview of how much work has gone into this, looking at all of these curriculums, because essentially I'd have to click out of this PowerPoint and show you every curriculum. So what I've done instead is provided you all the links. So if you're interested in looking at these curriculum on your own time and you want to see what we're looking at as a subcommittee, then you can link to this. Suffice to say, we've had presentations from all of these groups. Some of these groups have been recommended by people in this room. Some have come from Dr. Geyer, some have come from Mike, some have just come from subcommittee members who have worked on some of the curriculum that you see here. And we just heard about something new from Kate too, so we'll be kind of looking into that. But really, we've divided this into national curriculum and then regional and local curriculum. So what the subcommittee really would like to do is essentially utilize the regional and local curriculum that's been made because it's Arizona centric. So we would like to utilize, there's amazing curriculum that's been made across the state already. We'd like to utilize that and then have an ability to have backing from some of our national partners, right? So things like Sold Out Youth Foundation, NFL Alumni Health, and Song for Charlie are 3 national groups that are interested in partnering with us and potentially letting us utilize some of their materials, their social media presence to promote this in the state of Arizona, with the goal of potentially maybe promoting this on a national level with their partnership at a later date. And then the regional / local, so Community Bridges, the reason there's no link there is I'm still waiting on getting their information is proprietary, so we have to figure out how we're going to be able to disseminate that to the subcommittee without breaching some of their rules that they have in place. We have SACL AZ, which has an amazing toolkit. Most of that is Arizona-centric. And then we have the University of Arizona, which just has developed some naloxone education, which is a gap that our group has identified. So a lot of these curriculums, they do a great job talking about addiction and drug abuse, fentanyl, what happens when you overdose, and then they just sort of stop. They talk about, oh, you can give naloxone, and here's where you could maybe get naloxone. And that's really where most of the curriculums end. So what we're trying to do is find that thread to pull through of how do we provide naloxone education, and then what's the aftermath after you identify somebody who you think's overdose, you give them naloxone, and then what happens? And that really does not exist in a lot of the curriculums that we've reviewed. So these are curriculums. So there's a difference between curriculum and learning management systems. So you can embed curriculum into a learning management system. The learning management system is how someone accesses the information, right? We're all familiar with Brightspace, all these different types of tools, right, that you can use. So 2 learning management systems that are actually looking to partner with us. EverFi is a group that's already in Arizona. It's in a lot of Arizona schools. So they do other things besides opioid education. So these are ways to deliver information to a mass group of people, right? That's how these systems work. So EverFi is one, and we're looking into what they could develop for us. Specifically, they partner right now with Song for Charlie. So there is a connection there in terms of Song for Charlie does the content, and then they partner with EverFi to deliver a lot of that into the schools. Like I said, they're already in a lot of Arizona schools, so somebody in this room may have actually used the EverFi learning platform before. The other way to do this would be something that's been developed by NFL Alumni Health, which is called Village Paths. This is a completely customizable program. They're very engaged with us. They're interested. They have given us a sandbox. You guys will click on this and it will take you through a specific link that has been created for us. So if you want to see how it has no bells and whistles, it's very straightforward. If you want to see how the material would be delivered. And so basically it's kind of up to us. We would be importing whatever curriculum we decide, and then we could disseminate it using their Village Paths program. So these are all online based. So all you need is an internet connection to be able to do these. Both of them are pretty straightforward, meaning you don't need to have the highest speed internet. You don't need to have, a computer that can do all of these 3D graphics. You don't need any of that to be able to use these. And that's what we want, to be able to disseminate this to all the schools. So now this morning, what we've done is we have all met as a subcommittee, and we've actually heard from all of these groups. And so we have disseminated a living spreadsheet for members of the subcommittee to sign up. And basically now about 5 or 6 members are going to sign up for each of these categories, and they're going to do the deeper dive into the curriculum. So we're going to divide into smaller groups, and then they're going to report out their findings. So everybody has seen a surface overview of all of these curriculum, but really we need to get in deep into these curriculum and say, okay, where are the strengths, where are the gaps, and where do we need to go from here? And is there curriculum that we need to develop ourselves? So that went out this morning. And as you can see, it's got an ability to score the content, and all of the members of the subcommittee have a rubric. And we're provided that at the last subcommittee meeting so that they can go through that and score the different curriculum. So we've given people 1 week to sign up, and then we anticipate that we'll give them a few more weeks to kind of go through the curriculum, and then we'll all meet together to discuss the findings. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I didn't mention in the first couple of slides is that we have acquired a Native American representative for our subcommittee, which we think is really important as one of the underrepresented groups in Arizona, and a group that has a huge problem with, unfortunately, opioid addiction. So we want to make sure that the curriculum represents their needs. So he is going to be joining the subcommittee as well. That was one gap that we had identified. So as I said, the next steps will be to do the small group analysis of each curriculum and learning management system. And then we're at the point where we're going to choose the curriculum. So we're hoping by end of August, and potentially maybe by the next meeting, that we will have preliminarily chosen our curriculum and maybe an LMS that we can use, and then find out where our gaps are through this analysis so we can develop our own curriculum where the gaps exist. But based on what Kate said, we may have found some other information and some videos and some things that we could use that may fill that gap that we thought we may have had. So that's it. Open up for questions.
Can an option be added to the curriculum rubric whether or not these current curriculums are available online already? You mentioned an LMS. I'm curious if any of these already exist in that format.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we can definitely add that to the rubric. Like I said, the spreadsheet's kind of a living beast, so it should be able to update automatically. But yeah, that's a great idea. And most of these things do exist online. What I will tell you is that if you do go to some of these links, what you will find is that the information is there, but it's a lot of these groups, they don't just do opioids. So what you'll find is a lot of it's wellness, health. So you have to dig to find the opioid information, which is fine if you don't care and you're just a parent coming and looking for information. But if you're a school district that has this amount of time allotted during PE and health session to get this information to your students or this into your staff, you want to have a direct link and a direct way to track it. So what you'll find in a lot of these websites is they have the information, but most of them are not modular. Most of them don't have an ability to track who's done what, who's learned what. And that's where the learning management systems come in, because that's what they can do, right? They can track all of this. They know what school district, they know who logged in, they know who completed what, and they can do some basic analysis for us too. So one of them that I mentioned can do some basic analysis where it can look at the user and say, hey, you're having a lot of users stop at this module. So you go back and you say, why are they stopping at this module? Why did they complete it? Maybe there's a glitch with the module. Maybe it just doesn't work. Maybe the content isn't appropriate. So there's an ability to really drill down on some of these LMS are very sophisticated on the back end, even though what you're seeing as the user looks really straightforward. So pretty cool. I think we're going to get there. It's just going to take a little bit more dive and a little bit more grit to say. Other questions?
That was amazing progress for your team. Wow. I had the chance to sit in on some of this, and the curriculum rubric is just brilliant how you built that out. I think it's an evidence-based approach. I think that'll be well appreciated in the final product. So thank you. I was just curious. I know that many people that not only sit on the task force here, but external to us, live in that world where there is student education being provided by their organization. They go into schools, they've been doing work for a long time. And I just wondered if you could speak a bit how this works in tandem with work already being done in in-person environments.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And if you do talk to Community Bridges, the representatives from SACL AZ, a lot of the local groups, they do have representatives, particularly Community Bridges, that go to schools. That is Natalia Chimbo's main job, is to actually provide their curriculum in schools. So this would be in tandem. As you know, Dr. Kirklis really pointed out, is that, you know, we're not going to mandate schools to have students be trained on naloxone. It's going to be something that you say, here's the naloxone training for students, and if it fits with your school district, you're going to implement it. Same thing with this, is that here's the training we're going to ask you to implement. If you have the ability or want to have in person, then that's great. That's just additional training. And I would never say, don't allow a group to come into your school to provide more naloxone or opioid addiction training, right? The more training, the more touch points you get, the better. So yes, we're going to have the standardized curriculum that goes into schools, but I think this works perfectly in tandem with those groups that want to do in person. Now, you may ask yourself, could our group do in-person training? And I think at this point, it seems like that may be unrealistic. Maybe not in the future, but I think in terms of trying to disseminate a curriculum to 1.1 million students, and how many school districts? 400 and some, and then with all of the schools that filter under the district, I mean, I don't know, we're talking, somebody give me a number. It's a lot, right? So to ask a person to go into each of those school districts and provide a live training is really tough. So, but I'm not saying that that isn't something that could occur in the future. There are groups that have been able to do that on a smaller scale. So some of these national groups actually do go into schools annually, but it's on a much smaller scale. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely, no, fantastic. And Dr. Kirklis, if I recall right, at the end of your toolkit, you were looking at including community resources for additional information. So, you know what, for all of you, if you are familiar with external organizations that are doing this and doing it well, we would love names outside of those already on the task force. We can certainly add that to the list, I think. I don't see any online questions. Very comprehensive.
Someone has their hand raised.
I like it. All right, Kate. Kate.
Hi. Yes, there are a couple of networks who are located within communities that are working through the substance that the Arizona Substance Abuse Coalition of Arizona, SACLAs, that link on the Access website. Those groups typically have existing relationships with individual school building leads through anti-bullying, junior leadership academy, education on alcohol use and abuse and treatment, etc. So that would be an existing network within your county, within each of the counties, and then particularly within your communities that I would reach out to and leverage. They can train and do have access to all of these resources and may have existing relationships with your building leads, which would be easier then to create space for that training if it's a known partner within the community.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Kate, when you email me about the previous, will you send me that information too?
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you another email. I just responded with a few more resources for you, but
I don't care if you blow up that email.
The link to the SACLA AZ page, so that would be something you can share across school building leads, and then they can go into their county and identify the coalition or however you want to pass that out. But that would be how to leverage those existing community groups who exist to do this kind of training.
Fantastic, Kate. I know Mary Lee Fowler has been a leader in this field for decades, so what a resource. I'm glad there's another one there.
Exactly, and that's Mary Lee's work. So her network reaches statewide, and she does receive funding. The coalitions all receive funding to do this work at the community level, and it's entirely appropriate to reach out to them to ask for training within schools.
Wonderful, much appreciated.
In your process, great information. In your process, keep in mind that most districts also have a process to vet and approve the curriculum as being delivered to kids. So that takes a while. That's not a overnight process. Here's the curriculum, deliver it. There are some statutes that we have to follow, and it's quite a lengthy process that we have to put the curriculum out for inspection. It has to go in front of a governing board. It has to be voted and approved to deliver to kids. So build that into your timelines. It's not something simply we can just take and deliver. There's a process that we have to follow.
And maybe I'll pick your brain a little bit too, because this has, in my medical world, doing this with medical students and developing curriculum, this is similar, right? You don't just provide it and they say, okay, this is great. Like, no, it has to go through all the subcommittees and up to the level of approval. So I might need to pick your brain, because there may be some things that we can't do in terms of what we can provide if we're going to say it's from the state of Arizona. So you and I might need to talk about if you have a template for what you look for when you're approving curriculum. So that way we are following that guideline when you make curriculum. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Amazing work. Thank you. All right. Well, we are just about right on time, and last but definitely not least, we have got the last team coming up here, Opiate Antagonist. And I believe you're up first.
Okay. Hi, my name is Dawn Densmore. I am the co-chair of the Opioid Antagonist Procurement Subcommittee. Our incredible chair, Mr. Randy Moffett, with Arizona HIDA, is here with me. Just an overview of where we sit today. Go ahead. Next one. Okay. So the first few resources that are listed there are ones that are currently available to every single school or school district. And these are free products through Emergent and free product through Arizona Department of Health Services in coordination with Access. Also, any pharmacy will dispense at a cost, it's a small cost, with the current standing order across the state. No prescription is needed. Anyone can go in and purchase this. And I think we have seen it around $20 to $30 for a 2-unit package. Future resources, ADE will be a resource for free naloxone while supplies last, with an incoming disbursement from the AG's office in Arizona HIDA. And I believe, Randy, we've got that today.
That is correct. It's pretty remarkable. It just came in I've been running all over the state today, but it just came in. It's at the Arizona Poison Control, and I was just going to work with Mike, who's amazing, at how we could get it here. So with that being said, we have it, which is great, because I'm always the fingers crossed guy until it actually shows up and it's in my hand. So we have it, and it's remarkably available for individuals, and our goal is to make sure we get it to the people who need it most. And we can't lose track of that. We always need to get it to the people who need it most.
Thank you. We also have a pending draft letter requesting additional disbursements from the TEVA's, from the Attorney General's office. So that is pending, something we're working on. Next slide. All right, so our progress, we're continuing to evaluate the school district and charter needs. And most of that is really just based on the survey results as they come in. We're already starting to see some positive things come in. Once we get that data and can really drill down and look at it, we can, kind of just do a needs assessment. And then at some point we'll, match that up against what kind of product we have in hand. We would like to identify additional partners with sources of naloxone. And obviously, if anyone on any of the subcommittee task force, if you know of any community partners that can add to what we have, that would be tremendous. And obviously, we're planning for communication to schools for all existing resources for naloxone. Randy's created like a 1-pager, so that will go out soon, we hope. Next slide. Okay, so our identified objectives, just really partnering with survey subcommittee to enhance the data-driven decisions in the product distribution, building a communication template to deliver standard messaging to our schools, identifying standards for storing naloxone. We really don't have standards yet, but we're looking to get that. I think it might depend on which product is in our schools. And possibly whatever products are incoming down the road, because we might have, different methods of delivering the drug. And obviously just creating a process for distribution. We really don't know what that's going to look like yet. We don't know if, we're going to be mailing, physically delivering the product, what that will look like. Next slide. Our ultimate goal, in Arizona, accidental fentanyl poisonings are at an all-time high among young adults. We're just really trying to provide all of the resources that we can, best practices, and just saving lives.
Just to add to that real quick, obviously that's our primary goal, but I wanted to say we have some of the best people on our subcommittee, Arizona Department of Health Services. I mean, they've been amazing because, we can just make a phone call to them and go, hey, I just need to pick your brain. I need to understand how this works and everything. So we have them, we have Access on the phone call as she's been on our calls, and they're helping us walk through the process to make sure. And I was talking to Dr. Geyer just a few minutes ago, and we were talking about something. I'm like, I've yet to see anybody that has said no, that this isn't a valuable project. This morning I taught at a school district, and we talked about it, and we talked about naloxone, we talked about how to recognize an overdose, we talked about fentanyl, and then we talked about some other topics there. And just that one contact with teaching with that school, they're like, hey, can you do 5 more schools? I'm like, absolutely, but it's hot down here, in case you haven't noticed. But I mean, just one contact, 2-hour class, real quick, and they said, can you come do 5 more schools? And that's incredible, and that's what we're trying to do. Procuring the naloxone, it's been amazing. I will tell you, it's been amazing, and I'm excited to move forward. I'm excited to have the people that we can make phone calls to and work with, and they'll go, hey, Randy, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, got it. And then we'll just pivot and move to the other way. We have incredible people working with us. Dawn has been incredible. We talk probably 2 to 3 times a week, even so much as to what are you going to wear tomorrow? But it's been really good, and I'm excited. We're excited to do the work. Yvonne, you did a great job working on today. So thank you. We're waiting on the survey, and we're really excited to see where that leads us and where that takes us. So.
Don, Randy, you guys have been looking under every rock imaginable for additional resources. I've been so impressed by the work you've done, and thank you. There's a lot on the table, and I think what you offer for the resources is probably going to come up as one of the biggest inhibitors for many schools. So having these easily accessible with quick, access points online, hopefully through the toolkit, is going to be key. I didn't know if you'd have a chance just to speak for a second as to how maybe you're anticipating the rollout in schools would look as to where you might suggest they store and how many they keep on hand.
I knew you were going to ask that question, so I prepped it a little bit.
You don't have the formal answer, it's okay.
So realistically, our goal and what we would like to see is any campus that has wherever there would be 300 students, we want to have a box and a naloxone close and accessible. That's what we've really been trying to do. And when I say accessible, the ability to have it either on a school bus or possibly, in a custodian's closet where a teacher may have keys to the custodian's office to get it to where it needs to be. The other thing is we don't want to put it under lock and key. We want to make sure that if there's an opportunity to save a life, We don't want to go, oh, well, we need to find keys, and then another minute, 2 minutes goes away. So that's what we're really focusing on. We really need the survey to explain where we're at, because it's really hit or miss out there. And it's been said multiple times in this meeting, different school districts do different things. And it's really, you just need to go meet them and say, how can we help you, and how can we assist with this issue? And I will tell you, there's been some school districts that said we don't want to talk about that, and that's sad. And there's other districts that say, open arms, please, bring everything you got, bring it all. So So what a great group to work with. What a great partner to have by my side. And Holly and Mike, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Well, we've got some online questions here. Kate Dobbler.
Hi, quickly, wanted to be sure that we're all tracking that there is a standing order from Department of Health Services that allows all pharmacies in Arizona to dispense naloxone to anyone in the state who requests it without having a written prescription from their pharmacist or their physician. So underscoring that. Secondly, for anyone covered by access in Arizona, which includes foster children, DDD, regular access health plans, anyone who has a current access health plan membership, there is no copay for naloxone at any and all access contracted pharmacies across the state. And that is as of the current effective when it was approved AMPM policy with access that governs those contracted pharmacies. So there is no copay. So you can, anyone who has current access benefits can go to any contracted access pharmacy, request a kit of naloxone, one a day, every day, if needed. So work that into how we're talking about how we message access to naloxone in communities. It doesn't only have to come from Department of Health Services or from community coalition distributions, that people that have current access benefits can receive naloxone once a day at no cost from every access contracted pharmacy across the state.
And that's incredible.
So
Thank you.
my ask is that if you hear barriers from any pharmacy, from anyone, please forward those specifics to me, and I will elevate them up through our access pharmacy benefits manager, and we'll handle it on the compliance side. But we feel pretty strongly as Arizona's Medicaid system that people that need access to life-saving medications because of the severity of the opioid epidemic, they should have access to those medications at no cost. So why do you make sure folks are tracking them?
Perfect.
And thank you, Mr. Monkey, for the comments.
No, I was actually going to ask if you would send me an email for that as well, because I'd like to put that on my one pager. So I guess you got a lot of emails to send. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kate. We've got another question here from Ariel Moreno.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Thanks, team. I actually am on the subcommittee. Actually, I only was actually on one, so I can't claim to be on the whole committee. But I would just like to echo, yes, exactly using the standing order as Kate mentioned for access patients, for anybody who needs naloxone, that's going to be your first method. And then since I have the platform, for any school who's ready to implement naloxone into their schools, the first step, and I'm sure it's on Randy's nifty resource that he's going to send out to you, is to contact Emergent Biosolutions via email. They will give you 2 to 6 free naloxone kits to your nurses. So that is going to be the first place to go, and then working through other channels if needed, if necessary. If those 2 kids, as Randy alluded to, the recommendation of 300 students, we know most rural schools are going to have less than that, so they might not need 20 kids. They might only need 2 to 6. So I would definitely suggest starting there and then going outward.
And Ariel's great. If I haven't said that, she is. And that's where Don and we had a conference call with Elizabeth. And we said, teach us more about this Emergent. Tell us how this works. And Elizabeth was so gracious with her time and said, this is how it works. You go here, you send an email and say, I need it for my schools. And they send it. I was like, there's nothing else? And she's like, no, that's it. And so it's incredible. And So when we're battling about how are we going to pay for it or how are we going to purchase it, there's so many entities out there that want to do the right thing. And it's just a matter of reaching out and touching them and saying, how can you help us? And this is, by the way, what we're trying to accomplish. We want to save lives, and we want to save kids that are suffering from these accidental poisonings. And we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And they've been so responsive. And Holly, thank you for allowing me to help a little bit. So.
You guys are heroes. Thank you. Are there any other questions by the group?
Sandra?
I'm a mother of a recent graduate of a high schooler. And one of the things that I'm hearing, first of all, kudos to the entire task force because they've done a phenomenal job. This is the first time I'm hearing what, the fruits of your labors. My concern is that when you say you want to be available to everybody, not under a lock and key, there's a couple of things just in the back of my mind. Because naloxone still is a drug, not prescription, there can still be toxicities, even too much acetaminophen, right? Too much Tylenol, you can still get sick from that. Too much naloxone, not given in the right manner or the right dose. And so I think there needs to be, we really need to look at the balance between having it readily available and then just open. Also, theft comes to mind at the high school level, so yeah, it's not a criticism, it's just something to think about. I have not background in pharmacology, but veterinary medicine, so I do understand a little bit about pharmacology, and you still can get a reaction if you take too much naloxone. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Perfect, and thank you. And obviously, theft is always, if it's not tied down, things can happen. Obviously, we would hope that, and I'm the ultimate optimist, but we would hope that people are doing the right things for the right reason. Even though I was a police officer for 29 years and I've seen a lot of people doing the wrong things for the wrong reason, but we would hope that with that, people are always choosing to make the right choices and stuff. One of the things that I can tell you, and I don't want to go over too much on time, but we don't just go to a school district and we don't just go, by the way, here's free naloxone. We explain the dynamics behind the fentanyl problem. We explain how to recognize an overdose. We explain what needs to happen. And then we give the teachers the option to choose to save a life and stuff. So we don't force it down them. And we say, here it is. And by the way, then the last thing we do, and you only know that because I did that today, is we thank the administration for being so forward thinking and stuff. And we just say, we want to thank you for being forward thinking and also trying to save a life. Hopefully it won't ever happen. We hope that, and we go from there. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Excellent. Both of you, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Garrett, if I may.
Yes.
So Samantha, I did this to you at the last meeting, and I'm going to do it again. I so appreciate you as a student being present, and you've heard what we've said today. So I would just love to get some off-the-cuff feedback from you. Are we going down the right path? Does this make sense? Should we pivot? Just your thoughts.
I think it all makes sense. I like the last presentation about also the concern of the theft of it, but it could also be put with instead of having naloxone locked up, it could be put in a case like kind of how fire extinguishers are. So if that gets opened, an alarm will go off and teachers and staff will know there could be a possible fire going on, but there's no alarm going off. So that could be like possibly a way to pivot from the potential stealing of naloxone. But I think everything has been looking good. I think the survey, with how it's been sent out already, that's amazing, because then we can start getting the responses back and we can kind of get a little bit of an understanding of what we know, what's going on, who has naloxone, who doesn't have it. And then with the curriculums, I think we've been working pretty hard on seeing what other people have to offer. So I think everything's coming along very well.
thank you for that feedback, because you're our audience, right? So we want to make sure that we ask you if we're going down the right path. And thank you for your involvement every step of the way. It means the world to us.
Do we have any final wrap-up questions for any of the subcommittees? I'm not seeing anything online here either. No hands raised. So our next subcommittee meeting will be in about a month. I believe you've already received an invitation for that. Just to preface it, so Mike and I have been speaking with the communications team here as well. And we recognize there is a paucity of literature on this, not just in the medical field, but in the education field as well. We've drafted a rather lengthy list of all of the national and local educational venue opportunities to get this out there. We're talking podcasts, presentations nationally, journals in the education world, and then some have already gone out targeting the medical field. For those of you who have interests and skill sets in that writing arena, this will be a robust education plan if we take this nationally. And so I am soliciting interest for warm bodies and fast typing hands who are interested in maybe contributing to this. If you are a writer, we could use your skills to get this out, and we'll probably start these campaigns sooner than later. So shoot me an email if you're interested in contributing. We'd love to get the voices out there on the importance of this. For what it's worth, we're doing a national survey right now of all state laws related to naloxone rules in schools. And they vary from a scale of 1 doing nothing to 10 just over the top robust efforts. And most everyone's sitting at about a 3 across the nation. So education is needed. We would love to have your voice. So with that, Mike, any final words before we adjourn?
Yeah, just, Randy talked about his, 3 decades in law enforcement, and it's me as well. And I'm used to working at a very fast pace. This is impressive. What we as a group have done in this short time frame, the human capital that's been involved, what we've crafted, it makes me very excited for where we are at and where I know we're going. So thank you to everybody. I love the online engagement today. Dr. Croto, thank you for letting me pick on you and just ask you a couple questions, because as we start off with the survey, I want to make sure it's getting in the right hands. So to Samantha's point, we get that information back so it can help guide us going forward.
Awesome. Well, you are all amazing. Keep being amazing. And in a month, we'll see some more amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.